Well, welcome back, everybody, to TechNest. This week, we have Elyse Dickerson with us. Elyse co-founded Eosera in 2015. Eosera is a female-led biotech company specializing in ear care products with a leader who is focused on conscious capitalism and empowering fierce women. Elyse has so much just knowledge and insights that we're going to dive in today. So without further ado, Elyse, do you want to give us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, and I'm excited to see a bunch of my team on the call as well. So my co-founder's here with us, so he can always jump in. And if he remembers things that I don't, because it's been a blur of 6 years. But Joe and I founded the company in 2015 after the two of us had worked together for over 10 years at Alcon, and we were growing eye care brands. He worked mainly on the R&D side, and I was mainly on the commercial side. And so we were both asked kindly to leave about the same time, and thought, you know what, this might be a perfect opportunity to start something ourselves. So we put our heads together and our money together and spent really almost all of 2015 talking to doctors. We knew we wanted to be in the healthcare space, trying to figure out what were some unmet needs that we could potentially deliver on as a small startup company. I truly believe that you let the market tell you where the gaps are and then go and develop a product to fill that void, rather than just develop a cool product and try to find a place in the market for it. It's harder to do that than fill a gap that is clearly exposed in the market. So ear care was a category that doctors said, if you had over-the-counter products available, we wouldn't have to see these patients in our offices, and you would improve the lives of both the patients and the doctors, because quite frankly, the doctors didn't really like to see a lot of these patients. And so our first target was earwax impaction. And Joe and I spent about 9 months in the lab at UNT Health Science Center. We joined Tech Fort Worth. That was one of the first things we spent money on was our membership at Tech Fort Worth, and it was worth every penny. And we went through, what's the class called that we went through?
Think Lab.
Yes, Think Lab. We went through Think Lab, and we were there with Art. And so we still have a lot of great friends and contacts through that program. And then we came out of the lab about 9 months later and had a proof of concept, is what I'd call it. And we had gotten to proof of concept with our own money, but then we realized that to take it to the next level, we're probably going to need outside money. And so I don't know if you want me to keep going or
let's keep going. So you were in a pickle, not in a pickle yet. You needed some money. Where did you go?
We needed some money. And so we saw, I saw an ad essentially for the Dallas Entrepreneurial Center, the DEC, and Comerica Bank had a pitch competition, and the prize was $50,000. And I'm sure Joe thought I was absolutely nuts because I said, we're going to win that money. And so, you got to believe first, right? That's key to really anything you do in life. You have to believe you can do it first. And then if you fail, well, that's okay. But so I believed we could do it. And I spent day and night on a slide deck, because I was going to have, I think, 5 to 7 minutes to pitch the whole concept. And I met with anybody that would meet with me to review the slides, and I took feedback, and then I would change it and got feedback and change it. And then got up and was one of the finalists, and we won the money. So it was really, really cool in that not only gave us money to run a clinical trial, but it also gave us our first press around the company and around what we were doing. And also, more importantly, probably than anything, is it gave Joe and I encouragement to, we were we could finally tell ourselves, okay, maybe we're onto something here. Because every founder has that doubt, and especially that first year when you're slogging it out, you're just like, is this smart? Like, are we really doing the right thing? We're spending our money. Should we really be doing this? So that set us on our path forward. And from there, we went on to raise money from angel investors to help us scale up the business. Yeah.
And just to give everybody a little bit of background on like the timeline that you accomplished all of this, can you just go through that real quick of what years, how many months?
Yeah. So 9 months in the lab. So early 2016, we won that money, the $50,000. And then Joe got to work developing a protocol for a clinical trial and that just means putting the product in humans and seeing how it performed, because we had data in test tubes and it showed it worked, but we needed to make sure it really worked in the human ear canal. And then, so that was probably mid 16 that we got that data. And right around that time is when I got a meeting with CVS, the buyer at CVS. And he said, you can have 10 minutes. And he wasn't kidding. And so I thought, oh my God, this is as big or bigger than that, 7-minute pitch that I had for the $50,000. And I flew to Florida. And so this was late 2016. So we started the company March of 2015. We didn't have a finished product at this point, by the way. So I'm flying to Florida to some conference for a 10-minute meeting. And I had my slides down, like, I practiced it 100 times at least. And I told the story to the buyer. So you have to tell the story of why they need it on their shelf and how you're going to grow their category for them. Because that's their mandate from their boss, is I've got to grow the ear care or the eye care or cough, cold, or skin care, whatever they're managing. That buyer has to show growth year over year. And so to take a new product in, you've got to tell them the story and why they should take it. And so I laid it out for him in about 8 minutes so that we could have 2 minutes to discuss. And I had it timed. And at the end of the 8 minutes, he said, I love it. And I said, okay, well, how about we test it in 2,000 stores? They have about 8,000 stores. And I thought actually 2,000 was going to be a little aggressive. But I wanted him to think I believed in the product. And he said, no, I think I'm going to take it in all 8,000 stores. And so just to remind you, we didn't have a product. So this is late 2016. So I left the meeting and I remember standing outside the hotel right by my rental car calling Joe. And I said, we have good news and we have bad news. And good news, they want the product. Bad news, we've got to deliver, it was like 40,000 units in a matter of months.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And it wasn't even product.
And we didn't have, I don't think we had a
inventory
manufacturer lined up, like, solidly lined up at that point. Because I recently looked back at the presentation that I gave and it wasn't finished packaging. Like it was a mock-up. It's not even our finished packaging that we use today, the design. So, but it's sort of lesson number one in entrepreneurship. You just got to be ready when the opportunity strikes. Mm-hmm. And Joe and I were going to do anything and everything it took to meet that ship date for CVS. So we launched on Amazon and CVS right at around I think it was April 2017 is when we first started selling product. So we had a few months in there to get our ducks in a row and launch the product.
Oh my goodness. And then,
yeah.
I mean, so once you had that meeting with CVS, is that when you really dove into building the team that could build it, or, what was that kind of pathway?
Yeah. So the first thing we had to figure out was how the heck are we going to pay for this? Because we were contracting out the manufacturing and they want payments, they want a certain amount of payment up front to buy all the components. And then they want to be paid essentially 30 days after they ship it to you. And so that's when so after we got the sale, so we're still in 2016 at this point, I am meeting with any and every investor that will give me the time of day. And I'm having breakfast, lunch, dinner. And, I took the approach that I wanted investors that believed in me and Joe as leaders, that believed in conscious capitalism, that, we are going to put the people and our vendors and our stakeholders ahead of making money. I'm a capitalist and I believe in making money, but I also believe that it's not at the expense of human dignity or, humans' quality of life. And so we picked investors that believed in that as well. And so we raised 1.2 million in that first round. And so a lesson to anyone out there that's thinking about raising money, I had modeled everything out backwards and forwards 400 times and said that I needed $600,000 to launch. And I went to some of my friends that are in the investment world, in private equity world, and they said, double it. And I said, but I don't need 1.2 million. And they said, double it. It's always going to cost you more and take you longer than you think. And it was the best advice. And I'm so glad I followed it. Because I didn't think I needed that much, but I absolutely needed that much to do it right.
And how long did that, from when you started looking for investors, how long did that take you to finish that round?
We were super lucky and super fast. And so I hate to give this as we're very unusual. It was 3 months that we started to raise money and closed with 1.2 million. A realistic goal is more like 6 to 9 months, especially for our first time raise. But I think we had such great traction in the market. We didn't have purchase orders from CVS, but we had a commitment. And I had spent my whole career building relationships in the community. And so those relationships matter, because people are investing in you as the leader, not the product Earwax MD. None of our investors, well, maybe 2 of them, knew anything about earwax. And so the rest of the investors just said, look, Elyse, I believe you know what you're doing. And I trust you. And so here's my check. Yeah.
Okay. And when was the moment where you felt like you knew what you were doing? Because that's one of those things where sometimes it happens before other people believe in you, and sometimes,
I still don't.
Really? Oh my God.
No. I mean, there are days. You never want to get too confident or too comfortable, and I really believe that because just when things are going well, something falls out the bottom. And I feel like I'm always putting stuff in the top of the bin and stuff is dropping out of the bottom. And, that's why you surround yourself with a great team that can help you keep putting stuff in the top and picking stuff off, throwing it back in the top. But I think, when we got that CVS order, I believed that Joe and I had a company. I really believed, I didn't know if we were a one product company. I didn't know, what fast forward 3 or 4 years was going to look like, but I believed we could do it. If that answers your question.
Yeah. Yeah. And for everybody to get a scope of, that's where you started. Where is Eosera at today? How many products, employees? Yeah. Where are you located? Like all of that.
Yeah. So we have an incredible team. We're 14 full-time employees, and then we flex up and down based on manufacturing needs. So a couple, let me back up a second. So a couple things. We ended up bringing manufacturing in-house pretty quickly because we were contracting out to a factory in Florida, and we were at their whim, right? And so they were wanting us to put purchase orders into them 8 weeks ahead of time. And when you're a fast growing company, you have no idea what you need 8 weeks from now or 16 weeks from now. I mean, the growth has been so much bigger than I expected, but it could have been so much smaller as well. So, and when you're spending that money and having to plan that far ahead, we decided, you know, we're going to bring manufacturing in-house, which there are a lot of fire pits to run through to do this. And so it's not for everybody, that's for sure. But we did it to control production timelines, to control the quality of the product, and to bring the price of the product down. But we can get into some of the major pitfalls that come with bringing manufacturing house. I wouldn't trade it, and I'm glad we do it. But that's a definite thing to consider. The other thing I want to just circle back to really quick, talking about retailers, because that was sort of the headline of this talk. So when you sell into a major retailer like CVS or Rite Aid, they are going to hold your money. And I knew this, but I didn't know this. I didn't understand the impact it would have. And so when I say they're going to hold your money, we launched in April of 2017. We didn't see a payment for almost a year. And we were shipping product that entire year and growing sales, growing their category, running ads in their stores. And so all the money flows out the door. And even though you're booking sales on the top line, you have no cash. And so, you know, they said it was going to be 180 days of holding our money. It ended up being closer to a year by the time they let the restrictions or whatever they called it. And they do this for all new vendors. It's to protect themselves financially. And I want to share this because at the same time, we turned down Walgreens in that first 12 months of launch because they were going to hold our money as well. And I knew financially we couldn't manage it. We would be out of business, even though we would have great sales. So, so once that money was released, then we took on Rite Aid. And guess what? Rite Aid held our money for about 120 days. And so I just share that because I think people think getting into retail is great and exciting, but from a financial perspective, it's a massive burden. And, you know, I tried to go and get lines of credit and loans, and nobody wants to give a small company a line of credit or a loan. And I was turned down by, you know, all the major banks. And I share that too, because now all the banks want our business. And quite frankly, it pisses me off because where were you when I really needed you? And I understand why, you know, it's all risk reward for them. And we were still super high risk, but you know, now everybody's knocking on our door, and I'm now loyal to the couple banks that gave us a little bit of a hand.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you brought manufacturing in-house, you did that. So how would you, I mean, I'm interested, how would you compare, you know, being in CVS to being in Rite Aid to being on Amazon? You know, did Walgreens ever come back? All of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So Amazon, we launched from the beginning. Once we brought manufacturing in-house, we then launched more products. So we now have 7 products on the shelf at CVS, and we have 3 products on the shelf at Rite Aid. We have, I think, 12 or 13 products on Amazon. We're about to launch into the nasal category. So the difference between Amazon and traditional retailers is Amazon, you're able to control your business. And there's something called Seller Central. And we ship product monthly to Amazon, or actually it's now weekly, and they fulfill the orders. So if you go on and order our product on Amazon, they're going to ship it out to you, but I'm controlling, it's actually Katie and Evan, Katie's on this call. They're controlling all the content on the listing. Everything you see, all the marketing, all the pricing, all the advertising. And so we end up giving up about 35% of that sale price to Amazon, but we keep the rest. And so that's a pretty good margin. When you're selling to CVS, Rite Aid, Walmart, anybody else, you're selling to them at wholesale. They typically only reset their shelf once a year. And so you walk into CVS and you walk into the ear care, eye care section, that shelf's only going to change once a year. And so you have to time it to that reset. And so you've got to be talking to the buyer 6 months before their planned reset and be providing them all the information along the way, hope they take it, and then be ready to ship in with that reset date. So retailers are much harder to work with because you're, you have to fit within their puzzle. So payment terms, their window of when they want you to ship. You asked about Walgreens. We've turned Walgreens down 3 times now. And here's why. It's not that I don't want their sales. I would love their sales. They have 9,000 stores. We'd be twice as big. They don't want to pay us. And they don't want to not just pay us for 180 days. They never want to pay us. And so they've gone to this model of what they call pay on scan. So we would ship in, let's just say for one product, we would ship in units for 9,000 stores. And then they would only pay me when that one unit sold through the door, and they would pay me 30 days later for that one unit. But that means they're holding a tremendous amount of inventory. You're talking at least $1 million at all times. You have accounts receivable from them of $1 million, and they're never going to clear it. And so we've just said no. I mean, it's a hard decision to make as an entrepreneur because you want those sales, but you have to make financially prudent decisions. And so I'm giving up a huge amount of business because I believe we can grow the business, in other ways and in smarter ways. So those are the really tough decisions that you can't just take every business that says they want your product. You got to really think through, can I afford to do business with them? How much are they going to charge me to put it on the shelf? Because they have what they call slotting fees. So every time you enter a new store with a new item, you're paying them up front to put it on that shelf.
Wow. So how did your relationship evolve from, that very first meeting in Florida with CVS particularly, that very first meeting in Florida to now having 7 product on their shelves? Does your relationship change over time? What does that look like?
So the buyer, his name's Ryan, he completely took a chance on me. And he's very entrepreneurial himself. And I think, he just said, why the hell not? And he saw the same opportunity, but he didn't have to give me, we were high risk, right? We were totally unproven. And so we were really lucky. But fast forward like 9 months, we were growing his category 35%. This was a category that had been flat, and one product was growing at 35%. And so he was like, holy cow, I look like a rock star. I'm a buyer and I look like a rock star, right? And so then of course we look like rock stars. And so over time, he began to trust me more. And, and then I had his cell phone, and we were calling each other and texting each other more. And it's just like any relationship, and you build trust, and you do the right thing, and you're, upfront and honest about everything. And we have an incredible relationship now. I was texting with him yesterday, about a new product that we have coming out, and just sent him the, images of the comps. And he's just like, this is so cool. So you hope you get to that point with a buyer. You don't always. Some of them never give you their phone number and barely want to give you their email. But with him, it's definitely been because of we have sent cookies quite a few times. That's not below me to send cookies, and I'm not kidding.
I love that.
I'm not kidding at all.
I see Bruce laughing right now. That's his favorite form of payment.
It goes a long way. You'd be surprised. It's the simple things,
Oh my gosh. Yeah, the whole courting aspect of it, of, building those relationships. And I know you said earlier that was a big part into, why Eosera did so well so quickly, is because you already had those relationships built. So going to that, how did you build out those relationships? Were some from Alcon, were some from before then, were some just from growing up in, DFW? It
was a total mix. And so, like, the friend that gave me advice to double the amount of money that I should raise was my best friend since 6th grade. Right. So it was just a lifelong friendship. Joe and I both had a lot of incredible friendships at Alcon. He was there 15 years. I was there 13 years. We worked with incredible people, not only kind, but just smart and driven. And, we were all building Alcon together. And so when Joe and I left, we weren't really sure, how we would keep in touch with these people, or if we would, and when people got wind of what we were doing, they were coming out of the woodwork to help us. And it was not because they wanted part of the company or wanted anything in return. It was truly because we had put the time in to do nice things for them in the past, and, work with them, and we're friends. And, people, if you're kind to people, they'll be kind right back in ways you can't even anticipate. And so I'm just a huge believer in the power of true connections. I'm not a big believer in, just go to happy hour and just meet somebody once, and then, networking happy hour. You can take that to meet somebody, but then you got to put the time in to really build a relationship. You can't just call and ask for a huge favor, after meeting somebody once. Or you can, but doesn't quite go as far.
Yeah. And then talk to us a little bit about Joe. How did you all decide to do this together? Who got what role? Like, did you see it from the very beginning, how it was going to work out?
So when we were still at Alcon, I got involved with Health Wildcatters. Some of you might be familiar with them. It's an incubator over in Dallas, or an accelerator, I guess it's called. And I was a mentor for them for one of their first classes of companies coming through. And I took Joe to a couple of the meetings because he's a scientist and, has a scientific mind, and he and I always enjoyed working together. And I think that was sort of the first moment that, at least for me, I realized, these other people starting companies aren't any smarter than we are. I think especially, I don't know. I just always assume everybody's smarter than me in the room. I don't know if that's normal, but I've always been that way. That was sort of a turning point for me when I was coaching these people. And I'm like, well, shoot, I actually know something. And just hadn't given myself credit for actually knowing it, because I just did it. And so I think, and we were in a pretty toxic corporate environment. Things were not great at the company at that time. They had been super great at one time. It was in a transition period. I think it's really great now from the people I talk to now, but it was a dark time in the company. And so, I think Joe and I just thought, you know what, if we're ever not here, maybe we'll do something. So yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. And then, I mean, you know how as a company grows, your first hire can drastically change what happens next. So how did you guys go about that first hire and the 14 since then, or the,
well, everybody we hired at first is gone. So, I say that because what you need day one is very different than what you need, year two and year three. And we made some, I would just say, very quick hires. We didn't put a whole lot of thought into it. It was just kind of like, one person started by volunteering for us. And then we were like, okay, let's just hire her. So, and they just weren't perfect fits for what we needed long-term. So we learned our lesson. I don't regret that at all. They served a purpose, and they certainly helped us. But once we really got rolling, we started hiring the team we have now, and we worked with Hope Khan. If anybody is trying to hire somebody, I highly recommend her. She's amazing. She really helped put structure around our hiring process and rigor around it, and really made me think deeply about types of people we wanted, and and just be more thoughtful about the hires. And then we had the luxury of that too, because we were making money at that point, and we could see the future a little more clearly. Still very foggy, but a little more clearly. And so, and so now we have built this just magnificent team of, they inspire me every day. They're energetic, they're excited, they're doers, they problem solve all the time. And it makes my life very much easier when you've got a bunch of people around you supporting you and everybody's moving in the same direction. It's really important.
Awesome. Oh, cool. Well, and I know, that kind of just comes from lessons learned, and if you don't have, that 1.2 million to build a team, and you start off with the 50,000, it is part of the journey, is just starting off like that. So I'm glad you were able to highlight that, because I think some people, we get so nervous about who's our first hire going to be, how are we going to get an incredible person who's going to be with us for 10 years. So I'm really glad you highlighted that.
And I would say the partnership's more important than the first hire. If you're going, I could never imagine doing this alone. And I just had the luxury of knowing Joe for so long before, because you're gonna hit really bumpy roads. We ended up recalling product last year, and it could have not only destroyed our partnership, it could have destroyed the company, right? But because Joe and I had this incredible foundation, and belief in each other, and friendship, and same long-term goal, we got through it. But I think, I listen to How I Built This, the podcast, all the time, and partners, when they go through a rough spot, more times than not, they split. It's kind of like a marriage, and you gotta make sure you are signing up with somebody that you will go to the depths with and to the highs with. And that's the hard thing.
And then we're right around 5:15. So everybody start thinking of your questions. I have one more question for you,
Sure.
And then we'll open it up. But let's talk about, once you get your products in stores at CVS, it's not a done deal. That's it. Okay, we're going to go back to our office and sit and watch it happen. There's marketing, and there's everything that goes around with that. So what was your strategy there? Did you have to spend a lot once you got the products in there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, so the retailers really require you to spend about 10% of your sales with them in in-store marketing. So that money's pretty much gone. So that means when you run up to, the store shelf and you see $2 off, or you see the item in the circular, for a week. Those are all pre-planned really for the year, that the vendor has agreed I'm going to spend about 10% of my sales to support the brand. So that's off the top. And then Katie and Evan, they make up our marketing team, and they really focus in two areas. One is what I call social media, and then the other is PR. And they're really a dynamic duo. I mean, they work together, but then they have their, things that they're focused on. We're doing a lot of test and learns right now. So because we're getting bigger and we have more money, we're able to spend more. So we're testing a lot more with video ads that'll, pop up when you're watching, you're reading the news, and bumper ads on YouTube. But it took us, you just don't have a lot of money to spend in the beginning because you're either committing it to the retailers. So we just were really scrappy. And PR has been a great thing for us. I mean, we hired our PR agency really year one, and she's been with us all along. And I mean, I'm sure some of you are just sick of seeing us, out there in the PR world or in the news, but she earns every penny we pay her.
I love when you can say that. That's great.
I know, right?
And I gotta say, I am not sick of seeing any of it.
Well,
it makes me truly so proud and a little celebration every time I get to see that.
That's cool.
Oh my gosh. Well, wonderful. Well, I know I have a couple other questions, but I'm gonna save those for if
open it up.
Any breaks. Yeah, I'm gonna take us off. Let's see. I'm gonna allow for people to unmute.
Maybe Joe has a question.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, you got any questions about your company? Good time to put Elyse on the spot. If anybody would like to put their questions in the chat, if you can't unmute, but feel free to do that now. We'll get going. Elyse, thank you so much for answering all my questions.
Amazon is easy, right? Yeah, Amazon's super easy. No, Amazon it's a good business, but it takes a tremendous amount of time, not only to get it set up right, but then the amount of man hours that goes into optimizing, all the different ads and ad spends and listings. It is not for the faint of heart. You don't think you're just going to put up a page on Amazon and you're going to, sell $100,000. It just doesn't work that way. So the amount of time that it goes into that is huge.
And did you consider going through wholesalers before you did direct to retail?
So we sell to McKesson and Cardinal, and we sell to Oak Tree, which they're a wholesaler for audiology clinics that buy our products. And we sell to Warner Tech, which again, they sell to small audiology centers. McKesson and Cardinal, they reach the independent pharmacies for us. So mom and pop pharmacies, or maybe they have 2 or 3 locations, they're going to buy products from them. And then we have CNS wholesalers, and they are a wholesaler for food accounts. So we're in food stores like Stop and Shop and Ahold, and a lot of grocery stores are regional chains. And so a lot of them buy from wholesalers. So we sell to the wholesalers, and then they pull product from them. So that's really helpful. We also use brokers, and I think maybe that was part of the question. So brokers can help you get in the door with buyers. So we use a broker chain that I used at Alcon, that I trusted them. And then you agree to a certain percent of sales. So let's say for CVS, you're going to pay probably 3 to up to 8% of your sales to that broker if they get you the business. And it just depends on how you structure the deal. Again, relationships, right? Relationships matter. I had long-term relationships. And so I got really good deals up front. But brokers help you get in the door, and then they help you. Retailers have a tremendous amount of paperwork and back end system work that is required. And so the brokers will do all that for you. So if you don't have which we're not big enough to have a retail trade team, in-house. And so brokers help, they're just an extension of your company.
Let's see. Oh, we have a ton of questions. Okay, cool. We will rapid fire some of these. Let's see. Okay, so before we go into the next subcategory, how did you find a broker to get into retail? Or how do you?
Yeah. So I use a group called MPG, Market Performance Group, and Greenwood, and they're all together now. I'm happy. Anybody can reach out to me and I can give you their information. I used MPG when I was at Alcon for certain accounts, and they're great at what they do. They have amazingly deep relationships, usually up to the CEO of these companies. And we use them pretty much for every account now.
Let's see. Okay. And then we have a manufacturing question, and then we'll jump into a couple Amazon questions and then product development. So let's see. Manufacturing. How did you find your manufacturers, and how would one go about finding a manufacturer for their product? And I know you then moved it in-house.
In-house.
Did you ever go out of house, or was it always the in-house?
No. So we started with a contract manufacturer. And so there were contract manufacturers everywhere. Honestly, we started Googling. And there are some reputable ones, even in, I know Art uses one locally. We now have more of a network of contract manufacturers that we've had experience with, some good, some bad. But it's really a matter of just searching, making calls. That's how we found the first one. We just started making phone calls. But then you really need to, I highly recommend working with TMAC, and Tech Fort Worth has a relationship with TMAC. They can help you validate the manufacturer and qualify them to make sure that they are meeting all of the FDA regulations. You need somebody that knows what they're doing, and take it from us. I mean, that's one reason we recalled, is because we were not as thorough as we should have been on the qualifying and QA. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then let's see. Okay. So diving into the Amazon questions, let's see. So one person asked, what is the percent of sales in retail versus Amazon? Somebody else said, you mentioned that it's 35% is taken from Amazon. How is that different with the stores? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we sell on Amazon at a retail price point, and then they take about 35% off. When you sell to retailers, you're selling at your wholesale price. So it's usually probably 50% of what's on the shelf. So if you're selling something for $20, you're probably selling it for around $10. Categories vary slightly, but retailers are going to want to make, 40 to 50% on items. And so you're starting at that lower price point. So let's just say you're starting at $10. Then they're going to take 10% off of that for advertising in the store. And then you've got to pay for shipping to get the product there. And then you've just got your basic cost of goods built in. So your profit margin per unit is a lot smaller when you're selling to retailers, but the volume is so much bigger. So it's a trade-off. It's the volume versus our Amazon business is about, let me just do the quick math here. Hold on. It's about 20% of our business.
Amazon sales are, you said?
Yeah.
And then, okay, cool. That was actually one of the next questions. So right on. That's great. And then another question about being in stores are being in ear care, you know, that's a section of its own, but did you decide what section of the store you were in? Was that predetermined for you? What spot on the shelf? Any insights into that?
So the buyers have a mandate by category, and they call them category managers. And so they're going to tell you, like we when we sold Earwax MD into CVS, the category manager also happened to manage the pediatric section of the store. And so he asked if we could do a secondary packaging that looked more pediatric, same formula. And so he could put it in 2 places in the store, but the category managers decide that for you. And then they decide where on the shelf. You know, I would love it to be at eye level, you know, perfect, you know, you really have very little say in where it goes. You can try to negotiate it, but at the end of the day, they're going to make those decisions.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty nice that they're like, hey, let's put it in 2 locations.
Yeah.
Make a different packaging. That's incredible.
I know.
I did not know that that's
He's
how
like,
that
can you
works.
do that? I'm like, yes. Had no idea if we really could do it, but yes.
We'll figure it
Joe,
out.
we need a second package.
I love that. And then, oh yeah, okay. So that kind of fits in with it is, you know, with your 7 products, there's a question of how did you go from product to product? Was it, you know, you guys coming up with new formulas, or was it consumer focused if they were asking you for something different?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So again, we were successful with Earwax MD. We did a quick adjacency of Earwax MD for kids and Earwax MD single, which is just the bottle without a rinsing bulb. So it's all the same formula, but 3 different packages. Then we went back to doctors and we started talking to them, you know, what are some other ear conditions that you see quite frequently, and maybe we could build a product for it. And so that led to our Wax Blaster MD, which is an irrigation device. That led to Ear Pain MD, Ear Itch MD. These were all things that doctors were seeing, that, you know, and so they told us, go develop a product for this. And that was really then Joe sitting down saying, okay, well, what addresses itch? How could I come up with a formula that would address it? And then we'd go from there. And I'd usually say, like, can I have it tomorrow? And Joe would be like, no. And I say, well, can I have it in 2 days then? And he'd say, no. I'm just kidding. I'm not really kidding, but.
I love that. And then one question before we move on to another category was about the product development process. So can you just say a couple words on what was your process from Think Lab to actually having the final product in your hand?
Of our first one. So that took the longest, I would say. So we spent the first, after we knew we were going after earwax, we just read a ton of literature. And I am not a scientist, but I became one, right? So you've got to have this learner mindset. And I had Joe right there, you know, to teach me as I was going, but we were reading patents. We were reading any kind of medical literature that talked about earwax. And then we would just order different ingredients. It's kind of like being in chemistry class. You're ordering ingredients. We made an artificial earwax. We were scraping the skin off of pig heads to create earwax, because skin is in earwax. I mean, you do anything, you have to. And once we had a formula, then you've got to go through stability studies. You know, you've got to make sure that where you're sourcing the ingredients from are all qualified and meet the FDA standards. And then you've got to figure out your packaging, your container closure, because that you think it's going to work and maybe it doesn't. You know, so there's so many steps in development, and we're getting better at it. I would say we're putting more structure and more structure. With Earwax MD, it was kind of wheels off, like, because it was just us. But we've learned every time, we've learned something new, and then you take that learning and you get better.
Yeah. And one of the questions has to do with, did you trust manufacturers with formulas? But since it was your own in-house, was that a big proponent to bring manufacturing in-house, was not giving out that secret sauce?
No, here's the thing. Most of these manufacturers, they're not branded companies. They're there to package product and get it out the door. I mean, that's what they do. So we also we had filed a patent on our first one. And so we weren't super concerned because of that. But the reality is somebody's going to knock us off at some point. They're going to work around the patent. A contract manufacturer, that's just usually not the business they're in. And so if you're that worried about it, because a lot of them aren't going to sign non-disclosures, they're not going to sign non-competes. They may sign a non-compete. I don't know. But you just have to decide, is it more important to make the sales and build your brand, or never build a brand because you're too scared to let a manufacturer see your formula? That was the approach I took, but I'm a brand builder, right? And that's my background. Is you go out, you build a brand, and I don't care if somebody copies the formula, because I'm going to be there first with the brand.
Yeah. And I mean, that's an incredible approach, and probably, I mean, one of the biggest reasons why Eosera has, established all of that. So that's just incredible. And I know it's right at 5:30. So Elyse, do you have any closing words that you want to give and entrepreneurs in the room?
Joe and I, we feel so lucky. And so, and our whole team, we're here to help other people, especially in the community, because we've had so many people help us. So don't hesitate to reach out. I'm sad we didn't get to all the questions. So, if you want to send some over, we're happy to try to get back to you on them. And, you got to take it one day at a time. And that's the best lesson I've learned, is you cannot predict what's going to happen tomorrow. And you just got to be sort of grateful for the wins when you get them, but embrace the failures when they come, because they're going to come. We've had a lot of failures. We don't put that out in PR, but if you really sit down and talk to us, we pretty much fail every day. But we learn, and you just got to get back up. And it's the people that don't get back up that don't make it.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. And I know anybody in the room that's like me that can't get enough of Elyse, I mean, I could interview you all day long. We have her again coming back for Women in Wealth. She's going to be talking about the art of pitching. So again, she pitched, she got, that $50,000 to start off with. She pitched in Florida, got the CVS deal, pitched to investors, got $1.2 million. So her art of pitching is going to be incredible. We're going to have probably some Q&A time then as well. But we're going to have the chat open. That's in a month from now. So we will see you then. I'm going to put that back in the chat. Elyse, you rock. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining
us.
Everybody have a very safe and healthy week, and we will see you back shortly.
All right. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.